Bonjour, welcome everybody, bienvenue à tous. My name is Patricia Bonnat. I'm the president of Alliance Française Miami Metro, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to today's talk about La Chapelle de la Sorbonne with art historian Alexandre Gady. This talk is part of the World Monument in Paris series curated by Russell Kelly. But before we start, you know the routine. This is a Zoom webinar format. You can only see the speaker and his presentation. You have all been muted, but not without the voice. At the bottom of the screen, you can use the chat line icon for interaction. In fact, you can use it right now and tell us where you are listening us from, and the Q&A to ask questions, and our guest will certainly answer them at the end of the talk. Also note that this will be recorded and that you will be sent a recording in a few days. This program is presented in partnership with our friends of the Alliance Française de Chicago, with the Alliance Française of Miami Metro, the World Monument Fund, and communication support from the French Heritage Society and the Fédération d'Alliance Française des États-Unis. The series is also made possible thanks to the generous support of Solange and Bill Brown. A word about the World Monument Fund. The WMF is a private, international, non-profit organization dedicated to the preservation of historic architecture and cultural heritage sites around the world. The WMF has been re-established, its affiliate in France, and is headed by Mathilde Auger since 2023. And we heard Mathilde Auger in our first talk. Now about Russell Kelly. He is the Vice President of Alliance Française Miami Metro. He is the curator extraordinaire and moderator of the past 4 Winters Lecture series on our History and Héritage de France. He has been a Parisian for the past 30 years, and he is the author of The Making of Paris, the story of how Paris evolved from a fishing village into the world's most beautiful city. Today, he is coming to us from sunny Palm Beach in Florida. À vous, Russell.
Merci, Patricia. It is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Alexandre Gady. I took a course with Alexandre 5 years ago at the Louvre, and it was eye-opening. So I'm delighted to be able to introduce him today. Alexandre Gady first studied history, then the history of Paris, and finally the history of art, in which he has a doctorate. Alexandre is a very busy man. He has taught at the Sorbonne, at the École du Louvre, at the Institut d'études politiques, among other institutions. He's written about 15 books, including books about the Marais, the Place des Vosges, the Hôtel de Sully, the Quartier Latin, the Hôtel de la Marine, the Louvre, Notre Dame, the Jardin des Plantes, and Versailles. You can check them all out on Amazon or your favorite book site. He served as an expert on many commissions, including on the National Commission of Heritage and Architecture, the Municipal Commission of the Old Paris, and the Scientific Commission of World Monuments Fund, France. And since 2019, if that were not enough, he has been the director of the future Musée du Grand Siècle, the Museum of the Great Century, the 17th century, in Saint-Cloud, just west of Paris. So we are delighted that Alexandre Gady is taking time out of his busy schedule to tell us the story of the Sorbonne Chapel, whose restoration was announced just 8 days ago as the newest project of World Monuments Fund in France. À vous, Alexandre.
Thank you so much, Russell, for those kind words, perhaps too kind words. Greetings from Paris. I'm at home, and it's a great pleasure for me to be with you today to talk about a great monument, the Sorbonne Chapelle, which is on the WMF watch list this year. I'm not speaking here as a member of the Scientific Commission, as you said, Russell. Of course, for me, it's a very good choice, but as an architectural historian of Paris, who devoted its PhD to the architect of this great building, Jacques Le Mercier. That was a long time ago, I'm afraid, but the chapel has continued to fascinate me and I'd like to share its story with you. To this end, I propose a three-part lecture focusing on history, art, and heritage. And I share my screen. I hope it's okay for everybody. And I hope you appreciate my French accent. The first part is devoted to the short story of the Sorbonne. So we have the same level of knowledge. After that, I propose a focus on the architectural problematic, and to conclude, a small reflection on the heritage issues. So the part one, a short story of the Sorbonne, and the first chapter of this story is the medieval college, the foundation of the Sorbonne. I put some dates on the slides to be crystal clear. To understand the Sorbonne, we need to go back to the 13th century and the creation of a new institution in Occident, the University of Paris, the second university in the world. This novelty was made possible thanks to the support of the King Philip II, called Philip Auguste, the father of the nation, and the Pope. University was not an administration, even a building, but a community of teachers and students. They moved from the island of the Cité, near Notre Dame, to the left bank at this time. And we can say that the University of Paris changed the personality of the city. A political, economic, and now an intellectual city. At left, you can see students during a cursus honorum with a lecture, singing, drawing, and fighting. And at right, a course with the master, and you note that is bigger than students, of course, sitting and reading the Bible. The Sorbonne was a theological college founded by Robert de Sorbonne. And you have his portrait at the right. This man of faith, born into a poor family in the northern France, in Ardennes, a small red point on the map, became chaplain of the King St. Louis. And with his support, he created an institution for poor students, the College of Sorbonne, a joke with his name. This college became quickly famous in all Europe because in the Sorbonne you teach theology, the most prestigious subject in France at this time. And many students came in Paris to have a course in the Sorbonne. On this map, a bird's eye view of the Renaissance, we see the Sorbonne College, and perhaps I can use a signal here, at the center of this detail. It's a very important map of Paris. I choose just a detail. We see the Sorbonne College at the heart of a densely populated city, as you can see. The R here is for street, Rue de Sorbonne, the name of the college. C is college, and La Grande Rue Saint-Jacques, just at the east, is the Roman Cardo of Paris, the antique city of Paris. It's a very interesting map, because it's not absolutely the reality. It's not possible. It's an even reconstruction by the artist, but they put here some signal, the chapel of the Sorbonne devoted to Sainte Ursule, the door of the college, and this tower mark the aula of the college. Saint Ursule was a Christian martyr. I use now two modern plans recreate the district of the Sorbonne. The Sorbonne was in the left bank, one of many colleges. Perhaps the better image is today a city like Oxford or Cambridge in England, with different buildings devoted to the university. We have the idea of 50 colleges in Paris at this time. At left, this plan with the cardo, with the dotted line, the Rue Saint-Jacques, the Sorbonne is here. And you can see in the south of the city, the wall with little doors on towers. At right, it's a proposition of reconstruction. We have no documents. It's impossible to say if it was exactly what you see here, but it's a possibility. You see the aula, the library, the chapel, a little garden, and a second part of a college named Collège de Calvi, but it was the same establishment as we can see on this document. So the Middle Age is very important to understand what's happened with the chapel of Sorbonne. The second chapter of this short story is the 17th century with the Cardinal de Richelieu. You know, perhaps this magnificent portrait of the Cardinal by Philippe de Champaigne, his favorite painter. And with Cardinal de Richelieu, in the mid-17th century, the scale changed. He was born into a middle-ranking aristocratic family. He studied at the Sorbonne, became bishop, and after that, cardinal, and finally, minister and prime minister of the King Louis XIII. It's a great statesman. Without Cardinal de Richelieu, no Louis XIV. To mark his new social status, he dedicated the college and its chapel to be rebuilding of his tomb. And he paid for all the work out of his personal fortune. On this amazing engraving, Richelieu gave us the key of his project. At left, we recognize Robert de Sorbonne, the founder, with St. Louis in the sky. Above him, at right, the cardinal, mirror image, the Cardinal de Richelieu, the new founder, and his king in the sky, Louis XIII, was not a saint. And the new chapel in the background can be seen. This building is the subject of this paper today. Cardinal de Richelieu chose Jacques Lemercier as his architect. And you can see the famous portrait today in Versailles. Le Mercier was born in a family of architects in the Vexin. It's a part of the north of Paris. And he completed his training in Rome during a 6-year stay. He was in Rome when Maderno achieved the Saint-Pierre, the great basilic. He was a right-hand man, very honest, a key point for the cardinal, because Richelieu was a busy man with a politics and many charges in the church, though can't be every day on the project. He needs a good, solid architect. I'm sorry, I forget to show you this. Le Mercier chose Philippe de Champaigne because Champaigne was one of his friends, and he decided to represent the architect and his masterpiece, the Sorbonne Chapelle, just behind the architect. Another engraving, beautiful engraving by Sylvestre, famous specialist of architectural view, and shows a new chapel in its urban setting, highlighted by a square. The square is new. It's a creation of Richelieu and Le Mercier, who want to build the building to be visible. It's a micro-urban planning operation typical of this time. So they destroy some small building to create this new place still existing today in the Quartier Latin in Paris. And we have to connect the place and the church if we want to understand the project. This map from the 18th century, map of Paris, it's a detail, the detail of the left bank and the university. At this time, it was a time of enlightenment. And the prestige of the Sorbonne has declined, and the Enlightenment criticized the church and the traditional teaching, seen as too conservative. In the red rectangle, you can see the Sorbonne of Richelieu with the chapel, the new garden, the square, the courtyard with the building of the college. And this part are houses for lending, to have money. So this is the last image of the time of the splendor of this chapel, because comes a revolution at the end of 18th century, and the revolution was a terrible time for the Sorbonne. The Jacobins close the college, desecrates the grave of Richelieu, and beheads his body. You know perhaps Hubert Robert is a famous painter of ruins, and for a long time this painting was considered like an imaginary view. But in fact, the nave vault collapsed due to the lack of maintenance. And this is not a fantasy, it's a reality. The Sorbonne in ruins because the French Revolution. And the third chapter of this short story is the 19th century, the Republican Sorbonne. On this engraving at the beginning of 19th century, you can read under the view Musée des Artistes, vue de la Sorbonne prise dans la cour du Musée des Artistes. In fact, the chapel became a place for artists with workshops. We understand that the building has been restored and the roof rebuilt here on Napoleon's order. Thanks to Napoleon, because the building was so damaged that he was in question to destroy all the church. And Napoleon said no and pay for the restoration of this part, all this vault and roof. So he saved the chapel. The chapel is deconsecrated, and on this precious picture, we recognize the architecture of Le Mercier, transformed in a workshop of a painter, Franz van Dahl. It's a precious picture, very beautiful painting in the Worcester Art Museum today. And you can see the garden. They open a door on the old garden of the college, and the window here replace a stained glass from the church. But with this part, you have a light, very, very sweet for the painter of, and the models here, human models. This is student too, but in a different way, of course, at the college. Under the Restoration, after the fall of Napoleon, you know the king come back. It's a King Louis XVIII, the brother of Louis XVI, unfortunately Louis XVI. The king decided to restore the chapel and return it to Catholic worship. The Sorbonne becomes the seat at this time of the University of Paris. It was not the seat of the university. There is many confusion with that at the Middle Age and 17th century. But at this time, 1822, the Sorbonne, the building of the old Sorbonne, became the seat of the University of Paris. The portrait of Lawrence is a Duke of Richelieu, far parent of the Cardinal. He was a great minister of the king. Perhaps you know him because during the revolution, he was in Russian. He was the father of Odessa. If you go to Odessa, it's not possible with the war today, but in Odessa, you have a boulevard de Richelieu, Richelieuskaya, and a great statue on the harbor. The king gave the permission to the Duke, his minister, to restore the chapel. And you can see here a detail of the facade. It's a coat of arms of the cardinal and his family. This type of detail was destroyed during the revolution, and he commanded a new sculptor to make homage to his great cardinal parents. So the chapel, with the restoration of Napoleon I and this restoration by the Duke of Richelieu, is now in a good condition. Under Napoleon III, you know that Paris is completely transformed with the Préfet Haussmann, and the old Sorbonne district is not destroyed by chance. And this drawing shows a Vieux Paris sensitivity. It's another chapter we began here with this type of drawings, the old Paris and the transformation of Paris. And it make a new sensibility from monuments of the past. Two old photographies of the Sorbonne, and it's not old, but old. I'm sorry, there is a fault. And you can see the 17th century buildings from the Cardinal de Richelieu and Le Mercier, transformed in university room, class, library. But evidently, it was too small and impractical, and the idea of a new Sorbonne is born at this time. After the fall of Second Empire, Napoleon III, you know that France became a republic, the Third Republic, and fight monarchists and the Catholic Church. The Republicans have great educational ambitions and want to transform the university. The project is championed by the Minister of Public Education, the famous Jules Ferry, and you can see the portrait by Bonnat of Ferry. He decided to make a new Sorbonne and organize a competition for the reconstruction. The winner of this competition is Henri-Paul Nénaud. He was a premier prix de Rome, membre de l'Institut, so an important figure of the French architecture at this time, but perhaps a weakly talented architect, unfortunately. But he was chosen to rebuild the Sorbonne. Here is a painting. It's not a masterpiece, but it exists in the Sorbonne today. It's a decoration in the apartment of the Chancelier, and you can see Jules Ferry, the minister, examining the plans of the new Sorbonne de Nénaud. Nénaud is here, and the counselor of the minister. It's in a room still existing today in the Minister of Education at the left bank, Hôtel de Rochechouart. Here is a new plan of the Sorbonne, a huge rectangle with courtyards, galleries, classrooms, and a new library. The library is here, the great amphitheater here, the apartment of the Chancelier, the course classroom here with scientific part, chimie, physiology, mineralogy, physics, and the chapel. In fact, in the middle, in the heart of the new Sorbonne, you recognize the chapel of Richelieu and Le Mercier. It was impossible to destroy this heritage, and it's a great paradox that the Republican Sorbonne is built around a chapel. And for Jules Ferry and for Nénaud, it was a big problem, but it was completely impossible to destroy the chapel. So you have here a strange combination of two stories, the story of the church, of the theological college, and the Republican Sorbonne. Despite Nénaud's large facade in stone with heavy decoration, the new Sorbonne doesn't make impression. It's a boring monument, as you can see, the new entrance here on the Rue des Écoles, at the north of the land. The new Sorbonne at east, on the Rue Saint-Jacques, a very, very long and boring facade with a tour with the observatory of scientific course, and the new library just restored for the students, still working today. The chapel was carefully preserved during the construction, and the courtyard was rebuilt identically in a style reminiscent of the Collège de Richelieu. It's another paradox of the new Sorbonne. On this photography, you can see the chapel. The old building are still destroyed, but not the chapel, the college building. And in this painting, you see the chapel and the building of the college. They was built in stone, in perfect state, but Neno and Jules Ferry decide to destroy all the courtyard and rebuild in the same style. It's curious. The courtyard is smallest, but it's the same organization of the facade. And the position of the courtyard connected to the chapel don't change. It's today the prospect you can see when you go inside the courtyard. So it's perhaps for the fun, but we can say a word about May 68. The Sorbonne is occupied by students, soon of the French bourgeoisie. You can perhaps recognize the chapel of Le Mercier, and in front of the chapel, the leader, Daniel Cohn-Bendit, a young Marxist German French student, but today is a support of Mr. Macron, so you know that French political life is complicated. They admire great democrats like Lenin or Mao Zedong, and they love to write on the walls. And perhaps they ask here the real question: comment penser librement à l'ombre d'une chapelle? The paradox of the Sorbonne de Neno et Jules Ferry is clearly explained in this question, painting on the wall of the chapel. So, after this short story, I propose a focus on the architecture of the chapel. And again, the figure of the Cardinal by Philippe de Champaigne, fascinating portrait. A portrait with three cardinals, because it was a portrait for a model for a sculpture. So you need to have the face and the two parts of the face. And in fact, Richelieu is three people in one. He's a great politician, minister of the monarchy. He's a great cleric, cardinal, prince de l'Église, a very important part of his life, his mind. And he's a great lover on art. So that explains that he wants an exceptional chapel for the Sorbonne and for his tomb, because he decided to make a familial chapel with the grave of his grave and the grave of the family. The chapel is inscribed in a rectangle, result of the space available, and Le Mercier used all the place he had. It comprises three spaces: the nave, the transept, and the choir, all at the same dimension, against the tradition of architectural church, with the nave is bigger for the fidel. And here, Le Mercier changed the tradition. I explain why in a few minutes. The square in the bottom and the courtyard at left here. Entering from the town, the church looks traditional, with a high altar at the far end of the main axis. So you can see the direction of the view when you enter by the facade on the city. But if you enter from the courtyard, the chapel appears to be a center plan edifice with another altar in axis, just here, a big altar. So if you come in this way, you can imagine that it's the main altar, or the main altar is here, as I said. You can understand better this double plan, rectangular plan, in French we say barlon, and center plan. You know that the center plan was a great phantasm of architecture in Europe since Renaissance. So the center of the composition is therefore the dome, synthesizing the two planes, as you can see on my little plan. Jean Marot he was an architect and an engraving master. And thanks to him, we have a lot of view of the French architecture, 17th century French architecture. A part of this architecture was destroyed after that, so it's a source absolutely important for the history of architecture in France. And Marot's flayed view is probably based on a drawing by the architect, because it's very smart, very clear that you understand what is a chapel. You can see not only the plan, perfectly clear, and the double entrance, the entrance on the city, the entrance in the courtyard, but also the structure of the building with the masonry, the carpentry, and above all, the dome. This element is the most technically challenging, with the cupola made in stone. The white part are stones. The first in Paris at this height, at this level. We start with the facade overlooking the city. It's based on the two-story and pediment Roman model that has been common since the Italian Renaissance. It's a model very, very useful in Occident. The play of architectural orders sculpts the surface of this facade with columns in the first order and pilaster in the second. You note that the dome is not completely visible. It's impossible. You have no place to have a view very perfect. The square is too small. It's a problem. It's an unusual problem with this type of facade with a dome, when the dome is far the entrance and not immediately after the entrance. So we have a part of the dome, but not the dome completely visible. The first order is with Corinthian columns. Ce sont les ordres very rich orders. They cost many, because we have most sculpture on the part in the top of the column. And the second order is composite, the richest order from the Roman antiquity. And you recognize the coat of arms of Richelieu, but in a version of the restoration of the Duke at the beginning of 19th century. Sorry. So a facade, very classic, if I can say that. The courtyard facade is far more interesting because Le Mercier designed an antique temple portico inspired by Rome's Pantheon, a Roman monument much admired in the 17th century in Europe. And on this side, you can see the dome perfectly. The dome is fully visible into the composition of the facade. But for the contemporary Parisian, this was the masterpiece of the chapel. It's the first time in Paris with this portico. Of course, in Italy, Palladio was the master of this decoration. We can imagine his villa near Venice. But in France, it was not very popular. And for the first time, Le Mercier and Richelieu decide to have this portico. It's difficult to understand the novelty of this part of the Sorbonne, because we have seen so many buildings with portico today in the museum, around the world, in the palace of king, of president, in the capital in USA, etc. But here it's the first time for France. It was a shock for the Parisian and the French at this time. For the chapel's interior, the architect chose a stone barrel vault. The stone barrel vault is very heavy. This form is inspired by Roman art rather than the Gothic tradition. The Gothic is more light. You can see the heavy vault, but Le Mercier prefers this type of architecture. It seems more with dignity for a chapel and the grave of the cardinal. A detail of the elevation of the walls with pilaster, Corinthian pilaster, and a detail very interesting, this niche with shells in the top. It's a model of from Donatello in Firenze at the beginning of the Renaissance. Certainly, Le Mercier knows that directly when he was in Italy at the beginning of his career. In the center stands a stone dome. It's decorated with paintings by Philippe de Champaigne, the artist protected by Richelieu, and we see the portrait of the Cardinal and the portrait of the Le Mercier. And they depict angels and cherubs, celeste people. Perhaps I can show the four pendentifs. It's a French word. I'm not sure I found the good word in English, but we say pendentif. There are four concave triangles, and they make the transition from square to circle. I make a short, small schema at right. And for the paintings, Richelieu decided to choose the forefathers of the Latin Church, a choice logical for a college of theological students. So it was characteristic of this decoration of the Sorbonne. Perhaps you know that at this time, the dome, the dome à la romaine, was a solution for the church. Of course, they renounce to the high towers of Gothic architecture, and the way to modernize the architecture was a dome. And I choose 3 examples in Paris, but it's the same thing in Rome, of course, more important in Rome. This is a Saint Paul Saint Louis des Jésuites. Saint Louis des Jésuites, it was a church of this important order of the Catholic Church. And you can see the dome. It is exactly the same time that the Sorbonne. The 2 monuments were built together at the same time. This was built by an architect who was a Jesuit father. The church in the middle is the Val de Grâce. Val de Grâce is a church on the left bank in Paris. Is in the Marais for the Jesuit. The Val de Grâce in the left bank was supported by the Queen Anne d'Autriche, the mother of Louis XIV. She was a faithful woman, and she decided to rebuild an old abbey. The architect was Le Mercier, but after that, the church was completely achieved by another architect, Pierre Le Muet. This is the result of a combination of 3 architects, Mansart, Le Mercier, and Le Muet. And of course, the most important dome in Paris and the story of this architectural type is the Church of Invalides, the most heighter building in the 17th century in Paris. Today, it depends of the Museum of Army, and it's a grave of Napoleon I. You know that, of course. So, to conclude, some words on heritage issues. What is exactly today the Chapelle of the Sorbonne? I think first is a place of memory. A place of memory because you have the grave of the cardinal. Of course, it was destroyed. The body was destroyed. It's horrific, but during the revolution, except the head of the cardinal. She was rediscovered and buried in under the Napoleon III in the chapel. At the end of the 19th century, an historian and minister who have a great passion for Richelieu, Gabriel Hanotaux, decide to make a new examination of the head of his hero. So they open the tomb a second time, not to make a profanation, but to see what exactly was in the grave. And they rebuild the head of Richelieu. And after that, a third moment is the transformation of monument historique. We decide to place the grave at his good place because in the 19th century, the grave was moved in another part of the church. Today, the grave is in the exact place like Richelieu and Le Mercier wanted. In the middle of the choir, and you see the magnificent grave of the Cardinal, a masterpiece of François Girardon, a sculptor of Louis XIV. It was made long time after the death of the Cardinal, and is just restored this year, 2024. So it's a great new great news. We can see today the grave in a good condition. And you can see detail, wonderful detail. The face. She cried because the cardinal is dead. The great cardinal, defensor of the faith, is dead. But it's also an important place for the memory of the World War II, because under the chapel you have a crypt for the resistant teachers and students killed by the Nazis. And it's very important because every year you have a great and very emotional ceremony with the flag of France dedicated to this magnificent sacrifice for France, for save the France. It's perhaps a part not well known by the public, but for the community of the university, it's a very important place and a very important moment, this ceremony every year, to have a great thanks for this sacrifice for liberty. So, what is the program today for the WMF? The first thing in the restoration of the grave, you see the grave of the Cardinal, just restored, and the tomb of the Duke de Richelieu is just restored too, in the same time, 2024. This is a tomb of the Duke at the beginning of 19th century by Ramet. It's not very famous, but a good sculptor. So the owner of the chapel is not a university, it's a Ville de Paris, make his job. The second operation is the restoration of the paintings of Philippe de Champagne in the cupola and in the pendentif with the four fathers of Latin Church. You saw just a few minutes. And the good news is that it will be beginning in a few weeks in this year. We have a great opportunity to have this restoration. And it's a woman who was chosen to make restoration. And she had the great opportunity to see the painting very near. And the good news is that, of course, you have a modification of the 19th century and the 20th century, but there is a great chance that the painting original are still here behind the modification. So it will be, I hope, a great opportunity and a good surprise when this restoration will be conducted this year, 2025. And more difficult is the restoration of the structural problems, because the chapel is not in a good condition, as you can see on this photography, with falling stone, problem with humidity at right. It's very clear that it's not a good condition. So the WMF is proposed to help this restoration, to have, évidemment, with a mécène, new fund, to make a restoration, because at the end, the project is opening a great monument to the public, because it's incredible to think that the chapel is close to the student, to the teachers, to the public since 50 years. 50 years, a great monument in the center of Paris, in the heart of the university, close to the public. It's a absolutely amazing situation. So thanks to the Ville de Paris, thanks to the Minister of Culture, thanks to the WMF, we can hope, we can dream that in a few years, we will be a conference not with Zoom, but inside this magnificent building. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much for your excellent presentation, Alexandre. You very clearly explained the history of the Sorbonne, the architecture of the chapel, and its wonderful restoration plans. And we now understand why World Monuments Fund put the Sorbonne Chapel on its 2025 watch list. It's very interesting that you pointed out that the chapel was the first chapel to have a portico, first building, I guess, in Paris to have a portico, and the first big dome on a church in Paris. Is it correct to call it the Baroque style that featured the big domes?
It's a difficult word because in America or in England, Baroque is not the same signification that in France. So we don't use this word. We say Roman model, we say contre-réforme model, but not Baroque, because in France, we have no agree with, is a big disagree around this word. So we don't use it.
Okay, all right. That's a counter-Reformation style then. Okay. But that was an interesting remark that you made, that the large domes of that new style replaced the tall towers of the Gothic style, which I guess was the style that immediately preceded.
Mm.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
Okay.
And in France, people love Gothic style. It was very hard to the monarchy to say we need a new architecture, and
Yeah.
it was very difficult for the architect to change their mind and make a new architecture.
Mhm. Alexandre, you can close your presentation.
Yes.
S'il te plaît. There we go. Thank you very much. I think for most of us here, we've all been by the Sorbonne in the 5th arrondissement, and we have seen this immense building that goes up the Rue Saint-Jacques and along the Rue des Écoles, and it's massive. It really, so it was very helpful for you to show us the plan of the new Sorbonne, which shows just how much is inside it. And it also was very interesting to see that would you estimate that the new Sorbonne is 4 times the size environ of the old Sorbonne?
I don't know, but we can say that the plan of Neno was immediately criticized by the other architect. And the Sorbonne, the new Sorbonne, was considered that bad building, and especially Le Corbusier was very strong critic of Neno, because it's not exactly a university; it's a palace, but a palace with many space without sense. With great galleries, great decoration, but not very functional.
Is there anything left from the original Sorbonne of the 13th century?
No, no, no.
Okay.
They discovered the foundation of the first chapel, the Saint Ursule Chapel of the Middle Age. When they rebuilt the courtyard, they discovered the foundation. So we know exactly the place of the first chapel. It's at the middle of the courtyard today.
Oh, really? So the new chapel was not built on the site,
No,
the old
no.
chapel?
You have 50 meters
Oh,
verso the sud.
I see. Okay. And I noticed, back in the Middle Ages, back in the 13th century, all of the churches were orienté,
Absolutely.
facing to the east, and so the new chapel was built also facing east, perhaps.
Exactly. Right.
So,
We Mercier conserve the right orientation. Right. Absolutely.
okay. All right. And so you mentioned the Duc de Richelieu restored the chapel in 1822. Is there still a Richelieu family out there?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh,
As it's the rule, the cardinal has no child, but they have a brother and a great family. So the Duke is the same family. And we have to say that the last Duke is dead at the middle of 20th century, and his wife is dead in New York
ah,
in 69.
oh my.
Right. And today the family is completely finished.
Dispersed,
Right.
finished.
Right.
I
But
suppose.
the Duke is the second great statesman from the family.
Uh-huh.
It's
I
a,
see. The 19th century Duke.
way. It's a beautiful figure.
Uh-huh. I suppose you have been to the village or town of Richelieu in the Loire Valley?
Yes,
Yeah,
of
of
course.
course.
Right, right.
Okay. Well, for those of us who in the audience who have not been there, it's not near the river. It's a little bit away from the river, but and there's no chateau left anymore,
Well, it's true. Right.
just the foundations. But it is a wonderful little capsule of what
Mm.
17th century architecture is like.
Absolutely. It's a
Uh,
trip in the past. It's very
uh,
curious. Right.
hmm.
The architect of the city of Richelieu was Le Mercier too.
Oh, was he? Oh, okay. I did not realize that. So that if you want to see more Richelieu style architecture, go to the city that he built.
Absolutely.
And
And it's a beautiful chapel too in the city, like a Parisian church in the campaign.
which overlooks the city square, La
Right.
Place Principale.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you mentioned interestingly that the first of all, we call it La Sorbonne. Of course, it's been called La Sorbonne. Pourquoi La Sorbonne et pas Le Sorbonne?
It's a it's it's a difficult question. I don't know because it was this type of transformation of the name is a popular modification. So
Uh-huh.
why the people of
Okay.
13th century decide to say La Sorbonne? I don't know.
Okay. All right. Uh, I mean, there are other interests. Okay. We'll leave that. You mentioned as well that the original college was dedicated to ecclesiastical studies with the cleric sitting in the middle, reading the Bible to the students around. And you also mentioned that the Sorbonne is the headquarters of the University of Paris today. What courses of studies are offered at the Sorbonne today?
So after May 68, the University of Paris was destroyed by the government and divided in 13 new universities. Two of them remain in the building, and they have, in France, we say littérature,
Literature, yeah.
university not strong science, but sciences humaines. So
Uh-huh.
history of art, philosophy, language, French, and music. What else? I'm sure I'm forget
Yeah.
something, but no mathematics, physics, chemistry.
Okay.
It's another university.
Okay. We would probably summarize it in English by saying the humanities.
Humanities, absolutely. Right. It's
Okay.
humanities.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you see this fortress, because it looks like a fortress when from the street, it's a huge, long facades, which you called long and boring, as I recall. It's actually quite hard to figure out how to get into the Sorbonne. There is a small entrance on this street on the west side. What is that street called? The rue where the
Rue de,
Champollion?
alors, rue de la Sorbonne ou rue Victor Cousin.
Rue Victor Cousin,
Ouais.
which is for students only, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was different when I was student in the Sorbonne, but you know, after the different problem with attentat, this is a place of
Yes.
security. So it's very hard to enter today in the university. In the
Okay.
courtyard, it's quite impossible if
Yeah.
you are not a student or a teacher.
Okay. So we will have to wait until the chapel opens to
Yes.
at least the public to get a glimpse
I'm
of the,
afraid, yes.
yeah.
Right.
Okay, very good. And it's remarkable, as you pointed out, that the chapel has been closed for 50 years. And so I guess, do you have any idea when the restoration work might be finished and the chapel might reopen finally to the public?
Mathilde say we have to be carefully with this question, but perhaps 2, 3 years.
Uh-huh. Okay.
It will be a good schedule. I'm
Okay.
not sure.
That's encouraging. I'm delighted.
We need
So,
money.
yeah, well, okay. Duly noted, as you pointed out in your last slide, a lot of it will depend on funding from both the city and from individuals supporting this. And obviously, anyone who wants to help support the restoration of the Sorbonne can do so by contributing to the WMF site and specifying that they wish to support the restoration of the interior of the Sorbonne Chapel. Two more questions. So you are on the Scientific Commission of WMF France. What does that mean? What does the Scientific Commission do?
We have to choose between a most important list of propositions to restore, to save monuments. So it's impossible to say yes. We have to make choice. It's complicated. It's difficult because we have to be balanced with Paris, other part of France, great heritage, small heritage, classical heritage, modern heritage. It's a challenge. So the scientific board help to make a good choice. Well, we hope a good choice to be realist with the watch list.
So you picked one project. You selected the Sorbonne Chapel as your project for this watch list.
I'm not sure. It's more complicated. Perhaps Mathilde is here, but she can say a word about the list.
Okay.
No, deliberation are confidential. Yes, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Very good. Well, we thank you for that. And so you've written books about all sorts of parts of Paris, all sorts of buildings in Paris. Are you going to write a book about the Sorbonne?
I want to, absolutely. It's an old dream, but I don't find the time today. It's a bit difficult with the project of the new museum, but perhaps for the reopening of the chapel, I
Yeah.
can propose a new book,
Yeah.
a biography, a monography of this fantastic and so interesting building.
Well, I think that in your talk today, you certainly have the makings of a great book. And yes, the reopening of the chapel would be a wonderful way to kick it off. So thank you so much, Alexandre, for your excellent presentation.
Thank you to you.
And thank you to our partners for their support in the series. Thanks to everybody in the audience for joining us today. And we hope to see you next week, same time, same place, with when Alexandre Bonnet will tell us all about the Potager du Roi, Louis XIV's remarkable kitchen garden at Versailles, which was created during the very Grand Siècle that will be the subject of the museum that Alexandre Gady will soon be opening. Merci à tous.
Thank you.
Merci,
Merci.
au revoir.